Welcome, dear traveler. Before we begin tonight's journey, take a moment to settle yourself completely. Let your shoulders drop. Release the tension you've been carrying. Feel the weight of your body sinking deeper into comfort. Tonight, I'll guide you to a place where time moves slowly, where warmth embraces every corner, and where stories themselves seem to breeze softly in the candlelight. Close your eyes now. Breathe with me, in and out. Let the world beyond these words fade gently away. The snow had been falling since morning, transforming the village into something from a half-remembered dream. By late afternoon, when the light began its slow retreat behind the hills, the streets lay buried beneath a blanket so thick that footsteps disappeared within moments of being made. The world had grown hushed, as though someone had drawn velvet curtains across the sky itself. Through this transformed landscape, a handful of travelers made their way toward the amber glow that marked the old library at the edge of the square. The building stood 3 stories tall, its Victorian facade dressed in snow that clung to every architectural detail. Warm light spilled from tall windows, creating golden rectangles upon the white expanse of the courtyard. To those approaching through the winter evening, it appeared less like a building and more like a lantern placed deliberately against the gathering dark. The library's heavy oak door opened with a whisper of hinges that had learned gentleness over a century of use. Those who entered did so slowly, pausing on the threshold as warmth reached out to greet them. The transition from bitter cold to enveloping comfort required a moment of adjustment, a brief pause to let frozen fingers remember. Sensation and rigid shoulders begin their slow descent from tension. Inside, the entrance hall stretched upward into shadows that candlelight could not quite reach. A grand staircase curved along one wall, its banister worn smooth by countless hands over countless years. The air held layers of scent, old paper and leather bindings, beeswax from candles, the faint vanilla sweetness of aging pages, and beneath it all, wood smoke from the fireplaces that warmed the reading rooms. Mrs. Thornberry, the head librarian, appeared from somewhere deeper in the building. She moved with the quiet grace of someone who had spent decades navigating these halls, knowing instinctively which floorboards creaked and which remained silent. Her silver hair was pinned in a neat arrangement, and she wore a wool cardigan the color of autumn leaves. She carried with her an atmosphere of unshakable calm, as though she had absorbed the peaceful nature of libraries themselves. She greeted each arrival with a gentle nod, asking no questions about why they had ventured out into such weather. Libraries, after all, existed as refugees. Some people sought them for books, others sought them for warmth, for quiet, for the simple comfort of being surrounded by thousands of stories, while the world outside turned inhospitable. The fires are lit in all 3 reading rooms, she mentioned softly to those who entered, her voice barely rising above the whisper expected in such spaces. Tea is available in the winter reading room, and there are blankets in the cabinet by the philosophy section should you need them. The travelers, for that is what they became once they stepped through that door, travelers in a landscape of words and warmth, shed their snow-dusted coats and scarves. These were hung on the oak coat stand near the entrance, creating a small forest of damp wool that steamed gently in the heated air. One by one, they drifted deeper into the library, drawn by the promise of fire and comfortable chairs. Some went directly to the shelves, running fingers along spines with the careful attention of those seeking specific comfort. Others simply wandered, letting their feet carry them through corridors lined floor to ceiling with books, each one a small doorway to elsewhere. The main reading room occupied the heart of the ground floor. It was a space designed for lingering, with tall windows that during daylight hours allowed natural light to flood across the tables. Now, with night approaching and snow pressing against the glass, the room relied on candles and oil lamps placed strategically throughout. Their flames created pools of warm light, separated by comfortable shadows. At the room's center stood a large stone fireplace, its mouth wide enough that several people could have stood inside it. A fire burned there now, built with the patient expertise of someone who understood how to coax lasting warmth from carefully arranged logs. The flames moved in slow, hypnotic patterns, sending occasional sparks spiraling upward into the chimney. Around this fire, a collection of armchairs and sofas had been arranged in a loose semicircle. Each piece of furniture bore the comfortable wear of long use. Cushions that had learned to accommodate bodies, upholstery softened by decades of contact. Small tables stood within reach of every seat, ready to hold cups of tea or books temporarily set aside. An elderly man in a tweed jacket settled into one of the wingback chairs closest to the hearth. He had carried in with him a leather satchel, from which he now extracted a well-worn volume of poetry. Before opening it, he simply sat for a long moment, hands resting on the book's cover, eyes half closed as he absorbed the room's atmosphere. When he finally began to read, his lips moved silently, savoring each word like something edible. A younger woman, her dark hair still sparkling with melting snowflakes, chose a spot on the sofa near the window. She had selected no book from the shelves, but instead pulled from her bag a journal bound in blue cloth. She opened it to a blank page and sat with pen poised, not writing, simply waiting for thoughts to settle into words. Outside her window, snow continued its patient accumulation. Two students, who had entered together and moved through the library with the comfortable familiarity of frequent visitors, claimed a table in a corner where lamplight fell most brightly. They spread out textbooks and papers, but their studying proceeded at a leisurely pace. Every few minutes, one would glance up to watch the fire or to observe the snow beyond the windows. Their presence added a soft undertone of turning pages and occasional whispered consultation. Mrs. Thornberry moved among them with a tea cart, its wheels making the gentlest sound against the floor. Upon it rested a large ceramic pot, wisps of steam escaping from its spout, and a collection of mismatched cups that the library had accumulated over years. She poured without asking, knowing that on nights such as this, everyone welcomed something warm to hold. The tea was simple, black, with just enough strength to carry notes of bergamot, without overwhelming. Those who accepted cups wrapped both hands around them, letting the heat seep through porcelain into cold, stiffened fingers. Some added sugar from the small bowl on the cart. Others took it plain, sipping slowly, making each cup last. As the evening deepened, the library seemed to draw inward, becoming more self-contained. The snow outside worked as insulation, deadening any sound from the village beyond. Inside these walls, the loudest noises were the crack of settling logs, the whisper of turned pages, and the occasional soft footfall of someone wandering between rooms. The clock on the mantelpiece, an ornate piece of Victorian craftsmanship, ticked with mechanical patience. Its hands moved toward the dinner hour, though no one in the reading room showed any inclination to leave. The library, Mrs. Thornberry had long ago decided, was particularly itself during snowstorms, a vessel of concentrated peace floating in a sea of winter. In the second reading room, reached by ascending a short flight of stairs, several more visitors had gathered. This space was smaller, more intimate, with lower ceilings and walls lined entirely with fiction. Here, the shelves held adventures and mysteries, romances and tales of distant lands. The fireplace, though more modest than the one below, cast its own circle of warmth. A middle-aged man had claimed the window seat, a coveted spot where one could lean against cushions and look out at the snow while remaining completely warm. He held a detective novel, but had not progressed beyond the same page for some time. His attention drifted between the printed words and the hypnotic descent of snowflakes beyond the glass. A woman in a burgundy scarf sat cross-legged in an armchair that dwarfed her small frame. She had tucked a blanket around her legs and balanced a book of fairy tales on her lap. Periodically, she smiled at something she read, a small private expression that came and went like a shadow passing across her face. The third reading room, highest in the building, was the library's secret treasure. Fewer people ventured up the additional flights of stairs, and those who did found a space that felt almost like an attic study. The ceiling sloped where it met the roof, and dormer windows looked out across the village rooftops, now uniformly white. This room held the library's oldest volumes, books whose pages had yellowed to the color of cream and whose bindings had cracked with age. Here, a single visitor had taken residence, a woman of indeterminate age who wore reading glasses on a delicate chain. She had pulled her chair quite close to the fire and opened a book of botanical illustrations, each page a riot of color and careful detail. She turned the pages with great care, pausing to study each illustration as though committing it to memory. Downstairs, Mrs. Thornberry completed her rounds and retired to her own small office behind the circulation desk. She left the door open, remaining available should anyone need assistance, but otherwise allowed the library to maintain its own quiet rhythm. She had paperwork to complete, acquisition forms, cataloging notes, but she worked slowly without urgency, occasionally lifting her head to listen to the building's sounds. The library, she reflected, was never more alive than on nights like this. During the day, it served its function admirably, providing resources and space for study. But at night, during storms, when the usual routines fell away and people came simply to exist in its warmth, the building revealed its true purpose. It became a sanctuary in the most fundamental sense, a place apart from the world's demands. In the main reading room, the elderly man with the poetry book finally set his volume aside. He leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes, not sleeping but resting in that space between waking and dreaming, where the mind drifts freely. The fire's warmth settled over him like a blanket. The young woman with the journal had begun to write, her pen moving in steady lines across the page. She wrote without pause, as though transcribing something already fully formed in her mind. When she reached the bottom of one page and turned to the next, she did so without breaking rhythm. One of the students stood and stretched, then wandered to the window. Snow had piled high on the sill outside, creating a barrier between the glass and the world beyond. He stood there for several minutes, hands in his pockets, watching the storm with the absorption of someone watching waves on a beach. The candles throughout the library burned lower, their flames shorter but no less steady. Mrs. Thornberry would replace them before they guttered entirely, but for now they provided exactly the light needed, enough to read by, but dim enough that shadows could pool comfortably in the room's corners. Time in the library moved differently than time outside. Minutes stretched and condensed in unpredictable ways. An hour might pass in what felt like moments, or 5 minutes could expand into a small eternity. No one checked watches. No one hurried. The snow continued falling, and the library continued its patient vigil of warmth and shelter. In the second reading room, the man at the window seat had finally set aside his detective novel. He had discovered what the others already knew, that on nights like this, actual stories mattered less than the comfort of having a book in hand, a fire nearby, and snow falling beyond the glass. The woman with the fairy tales turned another page, pausing at an illustration of a castle in winter. The image, rendered in careful ink strokes, showed a fortress surrounded by snow-covered pines, smoke rising from its chimneys into a gray sky. She studied it for a long moment, finding in the drawing something that resonated with her present circumstances. Upstairs in the attic reading room, the woman with the botanical illustrations had progressed through spring flowers, summer blooms, and autumn foliage. She now lingered over winter plants, holly and ivy, evergreens and winter jasmine. Each illustration documented life persisting through cold months, beauty maintaining itself against difficult conditions. The library's clock struck 7, their chimes soft and melodious. The sound carried through all 3 reading rooms, acknowledged but not particularly heeded. Evening had arrived fully now, though it made little difference. Inside these walls, the passage of time was marked not by light and dark, but by the slow consumption of candles, the gradual settling of logs into embers, the accumulation of red pages. Mrs. Thornberry emerged from her office with the tea cart once more. She had refreshed the pot and brought out a plate of plain biscuits, simple fare but welcome. Those in the reading room accepted second cups gratefully, wrapping hands around warmth renewed. "The snow shows no sign of stopping," observed the elderly man, his first words in over an hour. He spoke not with concern, but with something approaching satisfaction, as though the weather had confirmed his wisdom in seeking shelter here. "No, indeed," Mrs. Thornberry agreed, pouring his tea. "But we're quite secure. The library has weathered worse storms than this." The statement carried reassurance beyond its literal meaning. Yes, the building was solid and well heated, but more than that, libraries themselves were stormproof in a fundamental way. The knowledge they contained, the peace they offered, remained unchanged regardless of what happened beyond their walls. As the evening progressed toward night, a deeper quiet settled over the building. Those who had been reading set aside their books. Those who had been writing capped their pens. Everyone seemed content simply to sit, to watch the fire, to listen to snow against windows, and the occasional whisper of wind finding its way through some small gap in the old building structure. The students in the corner had abandoned their textbooks entirely. They sat now with their chairs angled toward the fire, speaking in voices so soft they barely disturbed the air. Their conversation consisted mostly of long pauses, punctuated by brief observations, the kind of talk that happens between people comfortable enough with each other that silence carries no awkwardness. In the second reading room, the occupants had arranged themselves into a companionable tableau. No one spoke, but everyone remained aware of the other's presence. They had become, without discussion or decision, a temporary community united by weather and circumstance, and the particular magic of library spaces after dark. The woman from the window seat descended to the main floor, moving carefully on stairs grown familiar over repeated visits. She paused in the doorway of the main reading room, taking in the scene, the fire, the scattered readers, the pools of lamplight. Something in her expression suggested she was committing the sight to memory, storing it away to revisit during future times when she needed to remember what peace looked like. Mrs. Thornberry made another circuit of the rooms, not with the tea cart this time, but simply checking, observing, ensuring all was well. She adjusted a lamp here, added a log there, retrieved a book that had slipped to the floor. Her movements were those of someone tending a garden, maintaining conditions that allowed flourishing. When she returned to the main reading room, she paused by the fireplace. The flames had settled into a steady burn that would last for hours yet. She watched them for a moment, finding in their movement the same endless fascination humans had known since first discovering fire's comfort. "Will you be staying much longer, Mrs. Thornberry?" asked the young woman with the journal, looking up from her writing. "Until the last person leaves," the librarian replied. "That's always been our practice during storms. The library remains open as long as someone needs it." She said this matter-of-factly, as though the policy were simple common sense, rather than an act of extraordinary hospitality. Indeed, to her, it was common sense. What was a library for, if not to provide shelter when shelter was needed? The night deepened. Beyond the windows, the village had disappeared entirely beneath snow and darkness. Only the library remained visible, its lit windows offering proof that life and warmth endured. Inside, the collected souls continued their quiet pursuits, each following the rhythm that suited them best. Some read steadily through chapters. Others dozed in their chairs, books slipping forgotten onto laps. A few simply stared into the fire, letting their minds empty completely, finding in the flames a meditation that required no instruction or discipline. The clock struck 9, then 10. Mrs. Thornberry replaced several candles, moving through the rooms with practiced efficiency that somehow never felt rushed. She knew each candle holder's idiosyncrasies, which ones held their tapers securely, and which required careful placement. In the attic reading room, the woman with the botanical illustrations had closed her book. She sat now with it resting in her lap, hands folded over its cover, watching the fire with an expression of deep contentment. When Mrs. Thornberry appeared to check the room, the woman smiled and said, "Thank you for this place." "The library thanks you for visiting," Mrs. Thornberry replied, a formulation she had used countless times over decades, yet which never lost its sincerity. Downstairs, the elderly man had finally succumbed to sleep, his head tilted back against the chair's wing, mouth slightly open, breathing steady and deep. His poetry book had closed itself on his lap. He looked in the firelight like a figure from a painting, a study in peaceful repose, titled something like "Reader at Rest" or "Evening in the Library." The students prepared to leave, gathering their materials with reluctance. They whispered thanks to Mrs. Thornberry and bundled themselves back into coats and scarves. When they opened the door, a shock of cold air rushed in, along with a swirl of snow. Then they were gone, and the door closed behind them, sealing the warmth back inside. Others followed over the next hour, departing in ones and twos, until only a handful remained. These last visitors showed no inclination to leave, and Mrs. Thornberry made no move to hurry them. The library would close when the library closed, which would be when the last person was ready to face the storm outside. The fire burned lower, its flames shorter, but still warm. The room had reached that perfect temperature where heat enveloped without oppressing. where one could sit for hours without discomfort. The candles cast their gentle light, creating a glow that seemed to emanate from the books themselves, as though the stories contained within were radiating their own particular luminescence. Near midnight, the young woman with the journal finally stood. She had filled perhaps 20 pages, her hand moving in steady cursive across the paper. She closed the journal with evident satisfaction, tucked it into her bag, and approached Mrs. Thornbury. "I've been coming here for 3 winters now," she said quietly. "On nights like this especially. I wanted you to know how much it means. This place, this sanctuary." Mrs. Thornbury accepted the thanks with her characteristic grace. "I'm glad it serves you well. Safe travels through the snow." The woman departed, and now only 3 remained besides the librarian. The elderly man, still sleeping peacefully in his chair. The man from the window seat, who had migrated downstairs and sat reading what appeared to be philosophy. And a latecomer who had arrived near dusk and had spent the entire evening in a corner, so still and quiet that even Mrs. Thornbury occasionally forgot his presence. The clock struck midnight with soft chimes that seemed to acknowledge the lateness of the hour without insisting upon it. The elderly man stirred, blinked awake, and took a moment to remember where he was. When memory returned, he smiled, a small private expression of pleasure at finding himself exactly where he wished to be. "I believe," he said, his voice rough from sleep, "that I should make my way home before the snow buries the streets entirely." "I believe you're right," Mrs. Thornbury agreed, helping him gather his things. He departed with the slow movements of age, but his steps seemed lighter than when he'd arrived, as though the hours in the library had eased burdens beyond simple physical tiredness. Now only 2 visitors remained, the philosopher by the fire and the quiet man in the corner. Mrs. Thornbury made no move to encourage their departure. She simply returned to her office, leaving them to their own rhythms. In truth, she found these late hours peaceful. The day's responsibilities had been discharged. The library had served all who came seeking its shelter. Now it could simply exist, a warm pocket of light in the winter darkness, asking nothing, offering everything. The philosopher finally closed his book near 1 in the morning. He stood, stretched, and approached Mrs. Thornbury's office. "Thank you," he said simply. "You're welcome," she replied, with equal simplicity. After he left, only the quiet man remained. Mrs. Thornbury approached him gently. "We can remain open as long as you need," she said, "but I wanted to check that you were, well." The man looked up, and she saw the tears on his cheeks, though his expression wasn't precisely sad. "I'm well," he said, "or I will be. I just needed somewhere, away from empty rooms, somewhere that felt like this." Mrs. Thornbury understood immediately. She had seen it before. People who came to libraries not fleeing something dangerous, but escaping loneliness, finding in these public spaces a cure for isolation that private rooms could not provide. "Take all the time you need," she said, and meant it absolutely. He remained another hour, sitting in the dimming light, watching the fire burn toward embers. When he finally rose to leave, he paused at the door. "This helped," he said, "more than I can explain." "I know," Mrs. Thornbury replied, and she did. After he departed, she made a final circuit of the rooms. The fires had burned low, but not out. She would bank them carefully before leaving, ensuring they wouldn't flare dangerously during the night. The candles had mostly consumed themselves. She extinguished those that remained, leaving only strategic lamps to guide her final tasks. The library, empty now of visitors, seemed not lonely, but restful. It had done its work. It had provided shelter and warmth, quiet and peace. Tomorrow it would open again, ready to serve, but for now it could rest, holding in its walls the memory of all who had passed through its doors seeking refuge from the storm. Mrs. Thornberry completed her closing duties with the satisfaction of someone who knew her work was meaningful. She damped the fires, checked the locks, turned down the last lamps. She stood for a moment in the entrance hall, listening to the buildings settle around her. Outside, snow continued falling through the darkness. Inside, warmth slowly dissipated, though the library would hold enough heat through the night to take the sharp edge off morning cold. The books rested on their shelves, thousands of stories waiting patiently for readers who would come when the storm cleared. Mrs. Thornberry gathered her coat and scarf, let herself out through the heavy oak door, and locked it securely behind her. Her footprints in the fresh snow led away across the square, but within minutes they too had disappeared beneath the accumulating white. The library stood dark and peaceful, a solid presence in the storm, knowing it would be needed again tomorrow and the day after, and all the days beyond. It had stood for over a century. It would stand for another century more, offering shelter and warmth and the quiet company of stories to all who needed them. And in that certainty, in that patient endurance, there was a kind of peace that required no fire, no light, no people. The library existed. That was enough. The storm continued through the night. The snow fell and fell, and the library waited, as it always had, as it always would, ready to welcome the next traveler seeking shelter from the cold. Let your breathing deepen now. Feel how heavy your limbs have become. The warmth of the library surrounds you still, even as you drift towards sleep. You are safe. You are warm. You are exactly where you need to be. Rest now. Let the snow fall in your dreams. Let the fire's warmth carry you gently into sleep's embrace. Good night. you.